Hello and welcome again to New Beginnings podcast with Michelle. And we are sticking on our talk of finding your purpose. Peter Gordan here with us, and he already shared his story, but I know he has more to share with us. And we dive into his story a little bit. He's a dad of a beautiful 8-year-old girl, Princess. Miko is her nickname. But he is also currently doing his doctorate program. Yes,
in clinical psychology.
In psychology, yes?
Yeah.
And he is a licensed life coach, mental health therapist. You want to call it anything
licensed mental health therapist in DC who happens to be who happens to do some life coaching if that's what people need. Therapist, is very, very clinical. And sometimes people, they don't need that such a deep thing. Life coaching can also be something where the person just sort of non-clinically thinks about aspects of their lives and try to hone on certain things they're trying to achieve. So there are similarities, but there's differences, of course, right?
Yes, yes. One is more clinical versus the other one. It's more, I would call it like a mentorship coaching kind of.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are going to say our affirmation. I am choosing to believe that I am powerful. I am choosing to stand in my personal power. I am choosing to stand in my personal power with love. So we want you guys to love on yourselves. And the only way you could do that is give yourself some grace. Yes, give yourself some grace so that you can really find out, who am I? And what am I doing here? And what can I do to help others? And to even help my own self. Yes? So Peter went through some questions for us when we ended our last podcast segment. And the 3 questions were, why am I doing this? Who is this serving? Can I walk away from this? Now, these 3 questions, if you didn't listen to the last segment, please return to it. We're going to summarize it a little bit here, but you really need to listen in because the background story behind it influences these questions. And today we are going to zone in a little bit on the first 2 questions. Why am I doing this? And who is this serving? Peter, you shared with us before that there was a traumatic incident that happened, or three that happened with you, and that spurred you into the need for help to talk to someone, and you wanted a Black therapist to help you, but you didn't get a Black therapist to help you, male therapist to help you. Eventually, it came down to you getting help, nevertheless. But based on that, it also propelled you to consider, I want to become a therapist.
Right. That thought, that was coincidentally back a thought that was there years ago, but I had been pushing it aside because I think I'm a certain age, there's no way I can make this change. And then, of course, life happens and life forces you to confront aspects of yourself that you've been putting in a box and pretending as if somewhat doesn't exist,
Yes. Suppressing life, things that have been humbugging you. And this could be, guys, not just something happened last year. This could be something happened as a kid.
Indeed. And I think that's a very good point you raised, because when I think about my own life as a child, listen, I had both parents around in Jamaica. Odd relationship between my mother and my father. They were married, but it's very complicated. So much so that, at one point we were homeless in Jamaica. But what was odd was we were homeless, but my father had a house. It's a whole long story to understand, which I won't get into for now. But what I'm saying is how that, this will tie into this, is how that shapes how I saw life for a while, and how I use certain, what we call ego defenses or coping systems, which in turn shape your personality style, which then in turn shapes how you go after what you think you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Or, you know, what I believe I was born to do, or whatever, you know? So,
right.
Yeah.
What would you give me an example of a coping mechanism or coping system?
Oh,
so people could have an idea what we're talking about when we say coping system.
So we all have coping systems. We all have, in psychoanalysis, they refer to it as ego defenses. And there's several of them. I don't want to get, there's some primary one, the secondary one, they'll call them primitive defenses, not so primitive. For example, projection. I am married to you and I keep saying, you're cheating on me, you're cheating on me, you're cheating on me, right? What I'm doing is projecting my own insecurities onto you, right? That's how I cope, right? That's how I soothe myself. Or maybe I've gone through a traumatic situation and I repress the memory, because who wants to relive that memory over and over, right? Perhaps I need to, I am a child and I am being abused. I can dissociate, where I just have this outer body experience, where I am somebody else. And that may seem maladaptive, but in that person's life, that's important because that's how they cope. I may employ, which is very common, denial, right? I deny, or you'll see that a lot. Another one is compartmentalization, right? Now, these defenses are not bad. Sometimes, you know, when I work with people in therapy, there are times where I will have to compartmentalize, because I will hear some gnarly stuff, you know? And so I can compartmentalize, put it in a box, and then deal with it. However, here's the issue with defenses. When they become dogmatic, meaning that's the only thing you use to live through the world, eventually those things you're trying to manage, they have to come out somehow. And they come out oftentimes in our personality style. Like when people say, for example, this sort of bothers me sometimes when people say, oh, that person is a narcissist, they have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm like, is it really a disorder? It's a personality. That person's coping system, their life, has caused that individual to develop a personality style. Or, for example, someone that has borderline personality disorder, where they cannot see the gray area. They might say to someone, they might love you, the greatest person in this one moment, and perhaps you just turn sideways and they were saying something and they assume you absolutely hate them in that moment. Right? That's what we call, and that individual could be at risk for, like, you know, suicide, because they just can't cope. They live life in the extreme. Now, is that a disorder, or is just how the person's personality shapes? So when I am able to see someone and I understand what their defenses are, and I start to understand how their personality style is developed, the person might have what we call a neurotic level of organization, meaning that they are willing to come to me. They know they have something that doesn't quite function, or helps them, and we go on this journey, and I can say things to them and they might be able to hear it and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Then my person might be organized in a borderline fashion, where I have to be really careful, because if I say the wrong thing, boom, it sets them off.
Triggers.
Then you've got the extreme, like you got the paranoid or the psychotic. Those are whole different levels, right? So when I say coping system, that's how there are several different ones. You can Google them, ego defenses. And oftentimes people read them and they'll go, holy crap, I do that. You know, I know I tend to intellectualize and rationalize.
Okay.
You know,
we tend to do that.
A lot of us do that. Yeah. You start to, you'll be with someone in therapy and you'll go, and you can see them intellectualizing. And what you want them to do is to not be afraid to feel to feel that feeling or that emotion, because that feeling or that emotion is telling you something. We don't realize it's temporary, but it's a directive. So hopefully that answers your question. Those are what ego defenses are.
Yes, because when we talk about examples of what the coping defenses or coping systems or mechanisms are, then it does put us to figure out, why am I doing something?
Why are you doing the things you're doing? And this, it goes back to when I ask yourself, why am I doing this? You know, the practice that I contract with in DC is on L Street. So there's a whole bunch of lawyers and attorneys. And there's so many lawyers that I know that aren't doing law anymore. There's so many, you know, one of the people be surprised that a profession that has actually a high rate of suicide is amongst doctors. They decide, I want to be a doctor, and they're miserable. And a lot of medical students end up killing themselves, sadly.
Wow.
Because, you know, to become a doctor is so cool until you're in it. And then you're unhappy. Right. So it goes back to, as I said in the previous podcast, many of our decisions are not our own. They're influenced by our coping systems. Maybe we want to please our parents. Maybe we idealize our parents. So that's another coping system, by the way, idealization. Maybe we idealize our parents, and that influences our choice to go into things to serve them.
Yes.
Right? That's why I say, like, what you have to question, why is this pulling me? Right? Why is it that, you know, like, you know, why am I marrying this person?
Right.
Why do I stay married to this person? Why am I in a relationship with this individual? Why am I, you start to parse through, and you start to see how your coping systems have influenced your personality style and how you interrelate with yourself and relate with others. Right. So that's where I say that you have to really ask the question of why. Why am I going down this path? And in asking yourself, you have to be willing to open that door. And opening that door can be very, very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because you start to second guess yourself. You start to see yourself, you know, not fitting into what everybody else wants, because human beings by and large are tribal. We want to fit into an in-group. Right. We want to fit into that in-group. You know, that's what I was saying in that book, Escape from Freedom. He argues, by Eric Fromm, he argues that we're all trying to fit into an in-group. And that shapes the notion of purpose. That's why I say that I always careful when I say find my purpose. I'd rather say, how do you cultivate a purpose that feels right to me?
So how you cultivate a
purpose versus, you know, that's changing the language, changing the narrative to say that a purpose. Like, again, me doing this could just be that I'm satisfying some desire to be Dr. Gordon, to make my family or whatever it is say, go, oh, that's Dr. Gordon, right? I have to be okay with asking that question. And perhaps there's nothing wrong with wanting to be called Dr. Gordon. That's fine.
Yes.
Right? Because that would be kind of cool. But I would say that it's important to still be able to ask those questions. It's like when people post a selfie or something. Come on, we can pretend like we're trying to inspire people, but we want those like buttons.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You know, I'm pretty strategic with my social media posts. But if I post a selfie, there's aspects of me that want someone to like it. Again, there is strategy behind aspects of it. Yes. I'm not the most selfie person, but if I do, you know, there's a part of me that perhaps wants some validation. Social media companies know this; they're milking into that.
Yes.
So you have to ask. Yeah. So you have to ask yourself.
I actually use social media more so for my business.
Yeah.
So when I post something, I want somebody to like it because it's for my business, and I want people to engage.
But it also validates you.
Yes, you're right.
And you have to say that to yourself.
Yes, it does validate
that you feel, again, it's not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it like, think about it. When you post something and you get a bunch of likes, you're there. Oh, look at that. This person likes this.
You're right. You're right.
You know? And so being able to ask those honest questions, say those things to yourself and say, okay, I get this part.
Yes.
And then, but then as in your case, you say, why am I really doing this? The validation is cool, but really I'm trying to get this business out there more. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So this, we're called a compassionate critique of oneself.
Right. Right. And you have to critique yourself because everybody else is.
Right.
And you have to know why or what's your reason behind doing the things that you're doing to be able to understand, even though somebody says something internally, how is this affecting me? What am I doing? How is it affecting my being, my well-being?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. Yes. So when we talk about that, that leads us to that second question. Who is this serving?
Right. And again,
serving me, you, the family. Who is this serving?
Who is it serving? It's sort of like, let me say this. And I say that, why was I doing the things that I was doing before? Right. Like when I came to America to attend college, my sole purpose was finish a degree, go get a job, send money home.
Yes.
Right. That was that was my sole thing. I thought then I would have made it.
Right.
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 Every aspect of the things that I did between it wasn't until up to about age 45 where I said, because I'm 48 now, where I
don't
never,
look it.
Oh, thank you. You know, I asked myself, I've never asked, who's this serving? Never did. Like, and I realized that I was, growing up poor, the typical thing is you get money, you help the family out, right?
Yes. Well, that's our culture. That's how we will grow.
That's the cultural thing.
You help the family, no matter how old you get. Once you get a job, you help the family because it's not just your own household; it's everybody.
Yeah,
your
man,
mother,
exactly.
Your aunt,
exactly.
Everybody on the hill. Like I live on a hill. We help everybody on the hill. That's how it works.
Exactly. And so when I went to college, I did not think about really like, what is it I really want to do? Like nobody thinks about that. Nobody. Like they just go, oh, I'm gonna do this. But if you really go, dig deeper, like my major was mass communication and sociology.
Okay.
I was in journalism.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Have I really ever used that? No. Like undergrad is the biggest hustle out there, right? On an undergraduate degree. Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't know that. I just said, oh, I'm going to do mass communication and sociology. Finish, went out, got a job. And first thing I did was start to send money home. I was living in Boston at the time.
Okay.
And then really had to ask, well, why am I sending money home? I mean, of course they need it, right? But am I sending the money home because they need it? But it's also because I'm fulfilling certain parts of myself, certain parts of my own ego. I want them to know that I am the rescuer. Right? But I would intellectualize and rationalize that away, and say, I'm helping the family. But there was a part of my desire for validation that was driven by that. Right. And so when I worked all those years, it was feeding something, right? It's sort of like when I got into the fitness world, I didn't get into the fitness world because I was a fitness person. I got into it because my ex-wife wanted, we worked out together. She said she wanted to compete in a fitness show. She asked if I would train her. I trained her, and everybody else suddenly said, oh, you'd be a great goat trainer. Oh, cool. Then I, from there, built this narrative, because we can create this narrative for ourselves that feels very, very real, very legitimate, not knocking any personal trainers, but I know quite a few that are like, man, I hate getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I hate, one of the things where I started questioning, because I was in personal training as well, was that when my child was born, I realized I wasn't seeing her because the life of a trainer, you get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, you have to be at the gym by 5. And then you leave out and you get home 7:30, 8:30, all day.
So I would come home. I would from 5 till about say 9:30, 10 o'clock. Come home, the kids at daycare. I go back at 4 o'clock. By the time I come home, the child is asleep. Then I'm now resentful, like why doesn't the child like me as much as the child likes? The child loves me, but the child is attached to the mother. Well, you're not there.
You're not there. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so all of that driven by, really at the end of the day, I'd never ask the thing that I'm doing, who is it serving?
Right.
Who is it serving? And so that is the important part, is like, we don't ask, is it really, really serving us? Or is it we trying to serve a paradigm that we have told ourselves that we need to fit into?
Right.
Or unconscious self has, or unconscious self, or coping systems has sort of pushed us down this path without us even knowing it.
Right. So when we couple the coping systems, our past life, and what we are influenced by, we tend to want to serve that and not understanding who we are.
Yes, the personality style, it creates a personality style that drives the things that we think we do. It drives how we relate to ourselves, how the things we choose to engage in, but it also drives how we relate to others, how we are in our relationships, and so that is the important, that is the distinction.
Yes. So when we talk about understanding why we use these coping skills, it also influences how we relate to our family and friends and co-workers. And then if it is you decide to come out of that, so like for you decided, I'm done, I'm well, given life events, you have decided, okay, I need to strip myself away from this environment, because it's an environment, and really dig deep, who am I serving? That allows us now to understand. You have to ask yourself some hard questions.
Right, absolutely. And this is important in anything in life, even in relationships, even in marriages, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case may be. It is something that we have to ask. I mean, there are moments where, like with my current partner, there are moments when I catch myself, when I go, why is this bothering me so much? Is it really about this person, or is there a part of me that is triggered by this? And it's really the personality style that, and that's why I say when we overuse coping systems or ego defenses, that thing has to come out somewhere. And it comes out in maladaptive personality styles, maladaptive ways in which we relate to people, how we relate to ourselves. You can see it. Oftentimes when you're in therapy and you just sit there, you can just see it from a mile away. And you go, wow,
Right. So what would you tell someone that we're talking about this and somebody's feeling this deep emotion flowing over them that, oh my gosh, I've been projecting negativity on my son. How do I change that? What do I do?
Yeah, that's interesting. And by the way, there's another layer of projection called projective identification, where you project what you're projecting onto that person. You start to identify them as such. For example, you could say to let's say you're a single mother with a child, and you say, you're just like you're no good father. Right. And then you start to identify that child with certain behaviors, so much so that it becomes so real, when in reality it was your own insecurity with your failed relationship that you are hidden on this child, which shouldn't be blamed, right. But to your question about and let me make sure, can you repeat the question for me one more time? What you were saying?
Pretty much you projecting a negativity on a kid or another person. How can I stop doing that? How can
sit with the feeling? Sit with the feeling.
Sit with the feeling. Got it.
Stop. Yes. Stop. We do it a lot. I've done it where we think. When we start to think, we start to employ unconsciously I know it sounds counterintuitive, stop thinking and feel, right? Because when you think, it's when you start to create a narrative. And a narrative is oftentimes the foundations of the narratives you tell yourself is based on your ego defenses.
Right.
Which have influenced your personality style.
Right.
Again, the ego defenses is all based, most of it stems from your attachment style to your parents, the type of relationship you had with them, the type of experience you had in school, the things you went through, right?
Yes.
And then
so when you saying that, what's drawing to me is you say sit with it and think about it, but really and truly you may need help.
Absolutely.
Because if you have all these things influencing you from your past, you, as you say, you could create a narrative to make it sound good.
Yes.
And make it feel good.
Oh yeah. We all do this. We all do it. I've learned to sort of in my own relationship is to have the uncomfortable discussions, is to say, no, that doesn't feel good. I feel this way when XYZ was done. Right? One, I'm taking responsibility for the feeling, right?
Right.
I'm not absolving the action. I'm just saying I feel this way when XYZ happened, right?
Right.
So it goes back again to being able to sit in the feeling.
Yes.
Because again, as I tell people oftentimes, feelings are temporary. They really are temporary. I swear to you, they are. But on the flip side, feelings are directives.
Right? Yeah.
If you're mad at someone, sit with that feeling of the anger. Right.
Right.
The same Viktor Frankl I talked about in the last episode, Man's Search for Meaning, the author of that book. He says something which is always I try to employ as much as I can in my life. And he says that in between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space, you can choose your response. In that response lies your growth and freedom. What Frankl is saying in that moment is, when you are stimulated, when something is agitated, whatever it is, in between the stimulus and when you respond, there is a space. We think that space is very tiny, but it's bigger than you think. It all depends on the narrative you tell yourself, right?
Yes.
All depends on your personality style.
Yes.
So if you sit in that space, oftentimes you will find that you can come up with a response that has stepped out of the feelings of anger, the feelings of sadness, maybe even joy, because maybe your joy is misguided because you've idealized something that is not really that great.
Right.
If you sit with the
I'm trying to see an example here. Like my son would say, I see that you're angry with me. I'm like, I'm not angry with you. I'm angry at what you did. So I'm like, it's not you, the individual, it's the situation. Right. Let's deal with the situation at hand so that we can understand what was wrong.
Sure. And that's one example of it. Absolutely. And I think that that if we again, it go back to just, like I said, just sitting in that space. Like just sitting in that space and ask yourself, what is this feeling telling me?
Right.
I've seen, when I work with couples, you see it's so rampant. It's like the first inclination is to respond to the stimulus.
Right. Yes.
The first inclination is to respond to the stimulus.
Real quick too.
Very quick. And we make these assumptions based on nonverbal cues, things we know. And I have news flash for you. Human beings are very sucky at reading other human beings.
Yeah.
We call it theory of mind. And it's this idea that we think we can read minds.
Right.
And what research has shown is that we are terrible at reading people.
Right.
Terrible at reading people. You know what I mean? And we miss each other all the time. Miss each other all the time. You know? And these are people you're very close with. So so what I say, you know, like going back to the notion of, you know, how is it serving me, sitting with the feeling, all this stuff, it ties in together, you know.
Yes, it
ties in together. It's like I get stimulated. Oh, this is my purpose. I'm super stimulated, right? That's my response is I'm gonna go, you know, I'm gonna go jump down, I'm gonna go run this thing or do that, I'm gonna get this website, blah blah blah. Well, there's a stimulus. Sit in the space before you respond and feel, what is it, you know, what is this, why am I doing this, who is this serving,
right?
You know,
right.
Who's this serving? And it goes with anything, man, anything.
Yes. Yeah, it does. Like any business decision you want to make, in your home,
relationships,
as an individual,
everything.
Relationships, yes, it goes with everything. All right, so we are wrapping up this segment, and we have one more segment to do, of which we would be talking about, can I walk away from this? And that one is a big question, because sometimes we stick in things for years and never ask ourselves that question. So we're going to talk about that, but we looked and dived into why am I doing this and who is this serving? And the two books Peter mentioned was Escape from Freedom, and that's by who? Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm. Yeah, Erich Fromm, Fromm. He's a psychoanalyst from the 1940s. That book was written in 1949. By the way. Okay. Yeah. And so he's a Jewish psychoanalyst, brilliant man. That doesn't often get his just due. And then the other one, Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl, who was a existential psychotherapist. Who, you know, existentialism is all about this idea that we fall into neurosis or despair or because one, we aren't living meaningful lives, and two, that we also have this fear of death, which drives many of our actions, or doesn't drive our actions, because we either get into a paralysis state, you know. So So and with that said, we also talk about coping mechanisms, systems, and how that influence those two questions. Why am I doing something, and who is this serving? And we suggested sometimes you just have to sit and just listen to yourself for a minute. Why did I do that? Or why did this affect me this way? Try to go internally and really listen to yourself and understand. You may not even understand it, and you may need help to get
and that's the thing. That's where therapy can come in.
That's where therapy comes in.
Therapy can come in. Sure, things like I said, you know, that's where therapy comes in. I think that's where you do the deep work. Because again, for some people, they're able to uncover it very quickly, but for a lot of us mere mortals, that is not our reality. And I think that's where it's that space where we can start to do again, I like to use this phrase, the deep work. Which, by the way, it's an ongoing process. You know, there's a notion that therapy sort of happens in a vacuum, and you do this thing and you're done. No, it's continually unpacking things, and because every year we age, we change.
Yes,
no? We're constantly evolving.
Yes. So we have to remember to choose to believe that we have that power.
Absolutely, and let me add to that. What you're referring to when you say choose to believe, it's what we call internal locus of control versus external locus of control. An external locus of control is where we think that our lives are controlled by outside events. An internal locus of control is where we are able to come to a space where we realize that our choice, we do have the power of choice.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's what you're referring to from.
Yes.
You're saying it in much more palatable language, right?
Yes.
That people that
yes.
absorb, and don't change that. But from a psychology standpoint, we refer to it as external locus of control versus internal locus of control, meaning we believe things happen to us versus we can initiate how things, how we deal with things outside of us, right?
Yes. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you have to control it. You have that choice. Whether you control or not, you have the power of choice.
Yeah.
You have that power. Yeah. So yes, I choose.
Yes.
I choose to believe that I am powerful and I have that power of choice to change things. Yeah. Yes. And sometimes we have to sit and believe that so that we can change things.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we're getting somewhere with this. If you're understanding this, if you're not understanding this, guess what? You could talk to this young man. We will share his information on the podcast so that you can be able to contact Peter and understand, share, and he would help you, or he could guide you further into different ways of getting help if you're not in Washington, D.C. Because I know you can do this. If you need help, we can find help for you. Okay?
Absolutely.
But thank you guys so much for listening into this segment. We are coming back for more. All right. Thank you so much, Peter, and I'll see you soon.